Hey guys, it's Sam and this is my February wrap up. In February I read 4.5 books. I got really held up on my very last book of the month, so I will kind of briefly talk about the book that I'm in the middle of because I feel like it's the equivalent of one usual size book that I read. But I read about 4 books. A couple of them were a little bit denser than other ones. Some of them I read in one sitting and some of them I read over the course of like a couple weeks. So I had a really mixed bag reading month, but let's get into it. The first book that I read in February was The Abyss Surrounds Us by Emily Srutsky. This is a book that I requested for a review from Flux Publishing and I'm so happy that I did. This is a futuristic science fiction story in which the world is mostly covered by water and there are people that train genetically engineered and modified sea monsters to protect ships in pirate sea battles. If that's not enough to hook you, I don't know what is. I've done a full review on this, which I will link on the screen, but I absolutely adored this story. I thought this was a lot of fun. There were parts of the world building that weren't as fully fleshed out as I would have maybe liked, but ultimately I was in this for pirates and LGBTQ+ relationships, and I got both of that. There was a wonderful female-female romance in here, and there's wonderful, ruthless, reckless, awful pirates, which were really great because I was having a time where I was reading all these pirates books and I wasn't getting ruthless pirates. If you want some real pirates, they are in here, I promise you. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The second book that I picked up was The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chainani. This is a middle grade story about 2 friends who get sent to the School for Good and Evil, but they get sent to the opposite schools to which they feel like they belong. One of them feels like she's gonna get sent to the School for Evil, and she actually gets sent to the School for Good, and the other one wants to go to the School for Good and has wanted to her entire life, but gets sent to the School for Evil, and everything takes off from there. I buddy read this with a ton of other booktubers, but basically we all agreed pretty much on this. It is a really interesting middle grade story. It doesn't really read like middle grade, it reads more like a step between middle grade and young adult. It's definitely a lot darker. It explores themes of who's a villain and who's a hero, what that means, and friendship, and just a lot of things as far as fairy tale tropes. It really turns on its head. So I really enjoyed this story. It was denser. It wasn't really like the pacing that was an issue because it kept going as far as pacing, but it just felt like a denser read. So it took most of us about a week to read this, which is pretty long time for a middle grade. But I really enjoyed this one. I really like what it set up and I'm excited to see what happens in the rest of the series. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars and I have a review which I will link on the screen. The next book that I read was Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. This is a YA Beauty and the Beast / Hades and Persephone retelling. It takes place in a world that is ruled by a kind of dark lord, and there's a girl that's being married off to him. She was bargained away as a small child, and she's being married off to him, and her intent is to kill him, and everything kind of takes off from there. I went into the story with extremely low expectations because everybody that I've talked to about this has very mixed opinions about it. People either love it or hate it, but a lot of my friends really hate it, and so a lot of people were saying that they didn't think I was going to enjoy it. I think me having extremely low expectations for it made me enjoy it a lot more because I kept waiting for something like horrible to happen and it didn't. So while I think that the world building in here is incredibly clunky and that it needs to be fleshed out a lot and that there are parts of the plot that were just a little bit too convenient, ultimately I didn't hate it. I liked the relationship between the main character and the love interest, that kind of snarky back and forth banter that I come to expect from kind of Beauty and the Beast, Hades and Persephone retellings. So I enjoyed that element and I enjoyed the different kind of themes of looking at, again, who's a hero, who's a villain, what makes a bad person, blah blah blah. Again, there was a lot of elements that were clunky about this, so it was not perfect by any means, but I end up enjoying it. I have a full review on it if you are interested in more of my thoughts. It is a very polarizing book, but I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I finished in February was Illuminated by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is actually a book that I got as an ARC at BEA last year, and I had put it off for so long because I really wasn't sure when I first got it. I hadn't really heard anything about it, and then a bunch of hype started happening, so I wasn't sure about the hype, and everyone said they were really enjoying it, put them in a book hangover, all this stuff. So I didn't know what to expect going into this really because I was really hesitant to pick it up for some reason. This book, as you probably all know, takes place as a case file. So it is a whole case file of emails, documents, IMs, everything that has been kind of like marked up like an FBI file, and it's shown that way instead of through like dialogue or how it's normally written, normal prose. So I wasn't sure going in how that was going to work because I felt like with that kind of format you weren't going to get the character development and the attachment to the characters that you would from any other kind of format. And wow, was I wrong. This book had me hooked from about 50 pages in. It takes a little bit to get into it and a little bit to get used to it as far as all the different files and everything, but you actually get character emotions, character development, attached to characters, everything. I was so surprised and so blown away. I wasn't confused at all. There's so much in this and I can't wait to reread it, honestly, because there's a lot of things that I know that I did miss. But I was so attached to the 2 main characters. This takes place after a kind of like alien invasion on a certain planet and everything kind of takes off from there. And you don't really know what's going on, and the whole point is to go in blind. Like, just go in blind to this. I didn't know anything going into it, but go in blind. so good. I was so attached to all of the characters, and even side characters, you start to feel for them. I cried, I think, 5 times in this book. And I don't want to hype it too much because I know it's been hyped completely. I'm not a big crier as far as books and stuff, but the emotions that this book could convey through the different formats that it had was astounding to me. So if you've doubted this book, please give it a shot. It's not going to be for everybody, I understand that, but I was on the edge of my seat and I loved it so, so much. I am doing a full review on this. It's coming up really soon. But I absolutely adored it, and I just don't want to hear any reviews or anything. If you haven't read it, just go in completely blind, see how you feel, if you love it or not. But I absolutely adored it. I think it was so fast-paced, action-packed, and I felt so much for all the characters. I thought it was so extremely well done, and I can't wait for this to be a film. I obviously gave Illuminated 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I got about halfway through, and it basically counts as a full book to me in that way, is The Bronze Horseman by Paulina Simons. I'm about halfway through right now, and just my initial thoughts that I wanted to share is I'm not completely blown away by it. I have really mixed opinions on this. So if you guys have opinions on this, definitely stay tuned for how I'm going to feel about it. I've been posting a lot about it on Goodreads, and I've been dragging my feet on this because this book is huge. It's like 800 something pages, but the first half of it, or the first like third or fourth of it, really dragged for me, and I don't really love the characters and any of the side characters, and I'm questionable about the romance still, and this is an epic love story. So stay tuned for that, but I've gotten into the parts where I'm really enjoying the historical fiction elements of it, and those elements are so, so good. So we'll see how I feel. I'm very mixed bag on it right now, so I wanted to give you guys kind of a warning that this could really go either way for me. Either way for me. So that is it for all the books that I read in February. Comment down below and let me know your favorite book that you read this month. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!